live, so hello and welcome to the RPG Academy podcast, Detention Live. My name is Michael. I'm here tonight with guest co-host Moe Poplar and regular co-host Chris Burlew. And in fact, we'll just start with that announcement. It's earth-shattering, but Chris is going to be the official Detention co-host going forward.
Yay.
This started out as a show that had two regular hosts, and then we'd bring in a third guest co-host, and we're slowly getting back to that. So for the foreseeable future, it will be Chris and I. And then again, as I mentioned, tonight's guest co-host is Moe. Moe, say hello to everybody.
Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I hear it's quite snowing in a lot of places.
We're supposed to start getting snow right about now, at least according to the weather. Whether, again, those are always hit or miss, but it's been not as bad here as it is a lot of places, of course, but we've been pretty much locked in. We lost power Monday night about 11 o'clock, and it was out to about 6 a.m. that morning. And we knew it might be coming, so we actually turned our heat up. So it was like 76 degrees in the house. We were like sweating crazy. But by the time the heat came back on, it was down into like the low 50s. And we basically slept through it. We just all piled on the same bed. We covered ourselves up with all of our blankets, had the dog and cat with us, and we pretty much slept through it. But again, we're the lucky ones that we got it back on in such a short time. It could have been a lot worse than that. Before we get too much further, just a quick announcement.
Thoughts and prayers to those who don't have it.
Absolutely. Yes.
I said thoughts and prayers to folks who don't have power.
Yes. We have a close friend of ours, patron Big Al, is in Texas. He's okay, but Texas in particular, there's a lot of people there that are in trouble, and sadly, it doesn't look like things are going to get better anytime soon for them. But for tonight, we're going to focus hopefully on some positive stuff. I want to mention that we are currently at 497 Twitch followers, and we set a goal about 5 years ago when we started this channel that when we got to 500, not thinking it would take us 5 years to get there, to do a giveaway. So we are now just 3 followers away from 500. When we get there, we're going to give away a copy of the D&D Rule Cyclopedia. This is a print-on-demand version you can get through DriveThruRPG. This is where I got this one. This is a book that is near and dear to my heart. I played that version of the game for a long time. I had the original version of the book all through college, and then I got rid of it for some stupid reason and have regretted it. And when I saw there was a print-on-demand option available, I got it. It's a pretty good reprint. There's a few pages that are a little bit fuzzy, but it's definitely good enough to get to love and to play. And so I'll happily give a copy of this away to someone once we get 3 more Twitch followers. So with that out of the way, we're going to start as we usually do here with extracurricular. So this is a point where we just kind of talk about what we've been up to lately, what we're interested in. This could be books, TV, movies, CD, soundtrack, whatever you'd like to talk about. Mo, you have an RPG. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But if you want to slide in a plug here for that, as well as any other thing else you do, you're welcome to do so. And with that, I will start with you, Mo. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about your game and then what you've been up to.
I am the designer of Shibuyan Knights RPG set in a kind of steampunk modern Japan. So, I lived in Japan for a couple of years, and stuff just chews at you for at this point decades. And I finally in November released this game, and so I've been playing it and running it, and just kind of. I released it in November and kind of just coming down off of the whole RPG development cycle of, is this copy done and ready and no typos and ready to ship? So I have definitely been sighing in relief while watching, Mando, Scarlet Witch, or WandaVision. I still have the original Vision and Scarlet Witch miniseries where stuff happens that looks like it may be happening here too. So I'm really excited watching it. And I love how Marvel's just remixing stuff. I got a family, so a lot of my time that I'm not gaming out here in the garage, I'm kind of putting in the good time with the family. So I live in Southern California, and this time of year is pretty fantastic because we can put on our wetsuits and go to the beach and do some boogie boarding, or we could go to the mountains and do some sledding. I'm trying to get my kid into snowboarding, and at my age, snowboarding kind of hurts. So
I feel it. I understand that.
it's all kind of fun. But yeah, just it's a weird time. Not getting together with friends, not hanging out. I did an online con this past weekend, Strategicon,
Mm-hmm.
and that was good fun. I played a pretty cool game from a zine called Feminism.
Heard of
And
that one?
yeah, it was really weird and really cool. I think it's called To Reunion. And, just real kind of loosey goosey story game, which is great for playing on Zoom because
Mm-hmm.
it's like, all right, we don't need to like spend hours building a character. We don't need to kind of worry about all these rules. There are a couple mechanics and they get you 3 hours down the road having told a really interesting story. Um, Sadly, without combat in this particular case.
Yeah,
but
combat can be
you know,
overrated.
Same.
yeah, it's everything's good in moderation. So yeah, just been doing a lot of cool fun stuff. And been kind of locked in my house in the epicenter of COVID in Los Angeles, and I've developed way too many games at this point. Even my kid's trying to develop games,
Oh, nice.
and
That's like
he's
exciting.
like, I want one where dragons fight. I'm like, all right, well, let's figure it out, man.
Who doesn't want that?
This will sell.
Yeah. Quick shout out to Targris for joining us. Sorry for your Twitch ad before you jumped in, but that if that helps them pay the bills, and then someday, eventually, we might actually get some of that money. Hopefully, it's worth it. But either way, happy to have you with us. So, Chris, what about you, sir? What have you been up to lately?
A lot of work with the company being bought twice. So I've been going through 2 transitions and all sorts of fun stuff. When I have a little bit of time, my new little thing is I've been going on YouTube and looking up some of my favorite rock bands, the cover songs people are doing of them now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really neat to hear, Tool and Guns N' Roses and stuff being redone by groups now. So it's kind of neat for me. Kill a few minutes here and there.
Yeah.
Still keeping up with, a little bit with WandaVision. I'm an episode behind.
Yeah.
I know.
No spoilers.
Yep, no spoilers. I had to work this weekend, so couldn't watch it. Otherwise, just trying to get back into life. We've got probably 2 feet of snow outside, so we've been doing a lot of shoveling.
Nice.
Michigan's got a little bit of snow, but we're used to it. So. How about you? What have you been up to?
So as I had shared with both of you before we started recording and on the Discord, I got the initial sketch back today for the cover of Action 12 Cinema, which is that RPG I've been kind of half-assed developing for a while now, and I'm actually hoping that maybe this year with the year I can take it to Kickstarter, and it blew me away. I mean, it's just the initial sketch. There's going to be stuff done to it, but just right off the bat, I just love it so much, and it's a real thing. Like I can see a thing that only exists because I wanted it to, and that actually I got like a jolt of energy and excitement from that today to help me get back into the designing aspect of the game. We had the first official beta test this past weekend. Someone on Discord, patron of ours, ran it with their home group, and it went really well. Everyone had a great time. There was some feedback more for how the rules are presented and clarifications than like problems with it, which to me is like absolutely the best case scenario I could think of. And I'll misquote it, but one of the players paraphrased was, this would be a great low risk avenue to start DMing. And that's absolutely one of the things I'm going for in the game, because it's quote unquote a GM-less game where everyone kind of rotates the responsibility. So to have someone that didn't know that was one of my design goals to just basically quote back that that's something they saw in that experience, again, I could not be happier right now with where the game is and where I'm hoping to see it go. Definitely watching WandaVision. I am addicted to that show. I'm addicted to the talking and theorizing. Like normally I'm kind of spoiler averse. I try very hard not to get spoiled on like movies and like Stranger Things. I'll binge watch all Stranger Things in 1 or 2 sittings because I don't want to get spoiled or anything. But I am absolutely enjoying the process of talking about each of these episodes and what we think is happening almost as much as I am the show itself. Not quite, because I'm loving the show. And the way I have said it is this show does almost exactly what I expect each week, but it yet surprises me in the way that it does it.
Okay.
And I think that's to like Moe's point that it's sort of mixing things together. So the ingredients I'm kind of familiar with, but they're presenting them to me in a different presentation than I was expecting, and just absolutely loving that show. So thrilled to death with that. And honestly, that's about it. I'm still doing the Farm to Fable podcast. So we missed a recording because of the weather. So I doubled up and going to try to get 2 recorded this coming week. And then the patron, I'll finish up the patron one-on-one chats are still going well. I did one with Moe just a few weeks ago, and that's actually what led to him being here because I was so impressed with him and excited to share some of the things he's been working on. And we ran out of patrons, unfortunately, that would sign up for them. So now we've rotated and we're doing faculty. So I had an episode with Caleb, which was fantastic. I absolutely love getting back on the mics with him. It's been way too long. And then I've got one and another I'm trying to get scheduled. So just a lot of podcasty stuff. And the last thing is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm binge watching tons of shows that I've, either fell off on or never got quite through. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I watched as it was coming out, like the first 2 or 3 seasons, and then fell off. And now that it's all done on Netflix, I've started over. And the number one thing I will say is it absolutely makes me want to run a game like that, which also kind of falls into that WandaVision in a little bit, is I want to run a show about the people who are around the superpowered stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think that could be a ton of fun.
Yeah.
They do a TV series like that?
I'm sorry?
Didn't they do a TV series with... Oh, they were cleaning up after superheroes.
They started to do a damage control show, but I don't think it ever actually came out. And then there was a DC version of a show that was originally going to be something like that, and they changed it, and then it became like a tech company that was like inventing technology in the world of superheroes. And then it's like sometimes there'd be like crossovers, like it was like Bruce Wayne's cousin who was running the company. It was actually kind of funny. It wasn't a great show. I think it lasted like half of one season, but I would have kept watching. I thought it was kind of fun. It had Alan Tudyk in it, who I absolutely adore. Yes. Vanessa Hudgenson was like the star. And then Danny Pudi, who I know from Community, was one of the cast members. Can't remember the name of the show, but I liked it.
Yeah, it's really sad how people won't lean into the nerddom, Like when Iron Man came out, like Jon Favreau got in there, he got real nerdy, and people were like, Iron Man, 3rd tier superhero, and like now we got the Marvel Universe. And I felt like they started off Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of like that, and that I remember seeing the trailers on the DVD extras of maybe it was Avengers, and it's like, we're going to go find, the leftovers from the invasion. And, it seemed pretty cool, and I was excited, and, they went in another direction.
So here's the thing. So I'm rewatching. I'm halfway through season 2. And I have to say, and it's mild spoilers for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that what they were able to do and the constraints they had for that first season, it's actually kind of remarkable, because the first season starts off kind of slow.
Yeah.
But they had lined up their show so that on episodes, I think it was 17 of season 1, came out right before.
Right after.
And then, I think it's 17, 18, 16, 17, basically when Captain America Winter Soldier came out, which is, the revelation that Hydra has been implanted in S.H.I.E.L.D. the whole time. And so you have the show called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then on like episode 17, S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And then it's like crazy how they were able to marry that up. But when knowing that now, looking back, it's like, okay, I kind of get how they had to do that, because the show completely changes from episode, again, 16, 17, 17, 18, and then it kind of becomes a show that it was always going to be, which is pretty interesting. But they just had this long ramp to get there. It's still kind of remarkable that they managed to pull it off as well as they did. So I'm actually impressed to a point with it, but it's still, at this point in my life, I just can't get over a 22, 23 episode season. TV's just not meant for that. It's almost no one does it well. And something like premier prestige TV, like WandaVision, 8, 9 episodes, Game of Thrones, 7, 8, 9 episodes per season, Stranger Things.
Yeah.
I just think that model works so much better for genre TV. And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. just, that's not the world it was in at the time. But I think just about every show you name me, I would be like, it would be better with like half as many episodes. So
I loved Coulson. I loved Ming-Na Wen.
yeah.
I did not like the lady and the young bad boy hero guy that they tried to like. And,
Sky and Grant Ward.
Yes, yes. You lost me.
And I agree. And again, we're going deep on this, but that relationship is set up, and it's the very classic will they won't they workplace romance. But again, it all gets turned sideways when surprise we find out Grant Ward works for Hydra.
Yeah.
And so so I feel like it was kind of boring. Like, okay, I know where this is going for that twist, but then even after the twist, it still isn't great. I also feel like they held on to him way too long. I'm sure he had a contract because his character had a had a fulfilling arc. The character dies, but they bring him back as like a alien force for like half of another season. And it's the same thing they did with Zachary Quinto's character in Hero. I loved the first season of Heroes. It was remarkable. But they should have let that dude die. But because they had this actor who just popped and everybody loved him, they're like, we're going to make him come back in season 2. And it just didn't work. It absolutely would have been better if they just let him die and moved on.
I agree. I think most people feel the same way about Heroes. Stop at season 1.
It's so good. And even season 2 isn't bad. Season 3 is terrible. Except for the one episode, Brian, not Brian, what's the guy who created it?
I don't know.
Man, there's basically the guy who created it. He did like one episode of season 3, which is like the best episode of all season 3. But anyway.
Digging deep in the crates, did you guys ever watch Torchwood?
No, I've never watched Doctor Who. Never watched an episode of it, and that's
I'm not a Doctor Who fan, but Torchwood is what I thought Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. could have been. And it just cracks me up because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had so much bigger budget. And, the effects on Torchwood are laughable. But the actors just had chemistry, man. And, you just...
Well, I'm going through and binging all these shows. I might put that one on the list because that's one thing. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is an expensive-looking show.
Yeah, it's
like... They don't... Like, they have a couple of the sets, obviously, they reuse, but they also travel. They're going to all the... probably they're like, B-roll of the actual city, and then it's like a little lot or whatever. But the show looks like an expensive show. I'm sorry, Chris, I talked over you.
I'd say the difference with Torchwood and like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has to follow the network formula of here's how to have a successful show to make money, where Torchwood, they're just like, hey, we're going to go do this. Let's have fun with it.
The show is getting slow. Let's have some actors have sex on camera. It's not American TV.
So Targris says yes, there's only one season of Heroes. They agree Torchwood was good, but it looks like a BBC late night budget.
Yes.
So did Firefly, and that's a fantastic show.
Oh my god!
They reuse so many other costumes from other shows and movies. I've watched that series 10 times.
It's just capturing that lightning in a bottle when you can.
Yep.
So
and of course Fox ruined that one. But
anyway,
let's move on to something more positive.
So we're going to move into 10 things. This is our first improv game where we will take turns prompting one another to try to create a list of 10 things that fit the prompt that we give. The idea here is immediacy over accuracy. So trying to come up with 10 things is more important than 10 accurate things that make sense to the prompt, but that's part of the fun. Mo, you are the guest co-host tonight, so you can go first, second, or third in terms of giving a prompt or receiving a prompt. What would be your desire here, sir?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Name 10 modern cities.
Is it me or Chris?
Oh.
You pick one of us and then we'll make a circle.
Chris.
Okay.
You've lived lots of places.
More so than me.
Name 10 modern cities you'd like to have a fantasy adventure in.
Ooh, that's a good one. Detroit.
1.
Los Angeles.
2.
Chicago.
3.
I'd like to do Tokyo.
4.
London.
5.
Madrid, because my wife really would want that.
6.
Let's go Moscow.
7.
Shanghai.
8.
Let's go Constantinople. I don't think it's what it's called anymore, but
Istanbul. Yeah.
Istanbul. Thank you. I was blanking on it. And
I had to
Mexico
go to the
City.
song.
Mexico City.
City.
10.
Nice.
Yay.
It would have taken me an hour to name just 10 cities. So thank you so much for not picking me on that one, sir. All
The hard
right.
thing was trying to bounce around the globe in my head.
Yeah. I would have went to Pandemic and just been like Radaya, Hong Kong, just picking cities I remember from the map. All right. So Chris prompt me, and then I'll complete the circle with Mo.
All right. Last time I hit you pretty hard, so let's go easier. Let's go name 10 colors of shirts in your closet.
Oh, actually, that's kind of hard because black,
1,
gray,
2,
blue,
3,
yellow,
4,
green.
5,
Got the purple from Academaniacs last year.
6,
Red for the RPG Academy ones.
7,
I already said the black one. Plaid,
8,
different plaid.
9,
I have a safety green one from Academicon years back.
10.
10! Yay!
Yay!
Woo! Welcome Smash Gladly to the chat. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you being here with us tonight. It says Go Mo, so must be one of your fans or friends with us.
That's an awesome name.
Yeah. And just a reminder, we only need 3 more people to follow us to give a giveaway. So I'm just saying, you're here if you want to hit the follow button. All right. So Mo, so you have designed and published your own RPG called Shibuyan. I thank you, Smash Gladly. Now we're just 2 away. And I always like to ask this. It might be difficult, but can you come up with 10 alternate titles for your game? If you didn't call it Shibuyan Knights, what would it have been called? And again, these don't have to be accurate, so you could just pick up other names of other games if you need to.
Okay. Tokyo Drift.
One,
San Francisco.
2,
Shanghai Shuffle.
3.
That's the wrong country, wrong culture. But let's go with Knights of Edo.
4.
4,
Let's go with Tokyo Trouble.
5.
Let's go
5.
with Rapungan Rumble.
6.
Let's
6.
go with Skijin Pirates.
7.
Let's go with
7,
Matsuri Hustle.
8.
8,
And let's go with the Guild Wars.
9.
And let's go with Awesome Action RPG.
10. Yay! Those were 10 things. I would have went with Big Trouble in Little Tokyo. Just,
a good one.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you all for playing our little reindeers game. So now we're going to move into used books. And this is generally the meat and potatoes of the show. And we're going to talk about a previous campaign that one of us has either played in or ran. And the idea is we're going to try to mine this for some things that went well that we might want to continue doing. We've carried on to other games, or maybe some things that didn't go so well. We tried them and we will, now avoid them because they didn't work. So Mo, you are the guest co-host tonight. Do you have a campaign you'd like to talk about, sir?
So I have the inglorious distinction of having played hero games for a long time.
Okay.
Champions and Fantasy Hero, and we realized you could kind of be real fudgy with fantasy if you got away from D&D, which at the time was AD&D, and had lots of you can only level up here and have so many spells there. Mm-hmm. So we ran a Fantasy Hero game, and the characters decided they were going to go rescue the church from the goblins. They said that should be easy.
Yeah.
So they go and they decide to rescue the church from the goblins, and they run into the goblins have blocked the road. So because this is Fantasy Hero and not D&D, one of the characters had decided their character is a witch and can fly. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's a little Gonzo Monty Hall from the start. And another character decides that he can throw lightning bolts. So they decide they're going to fly over the goblins and throw some lightning bolts down on them. And this is going to be an easy challenge to resolve. And so they get nice and high up in the air. I say, how many hexes you going to go up in the air? And they tell me they're going to go up, 10, 15 hexes. And I'm like, all right. So, and they say, oh, wait, what's arrow range? And I say, well, arrow range is probably 15 hexes. All right, we go 15 hexes. So they get it high up in the sky, and they're going to fly over the Goblin Brigade and throw some lightning down on them. And I let them get, split the difference, 15 hexes up, about 10 hexes from their friends. And a goblin shoots a fireball at them and hits. And the witch gets stunned because her whole thing is, I'm not going to get hit. So she falls. So they take falling damage. They take fireball damage. And then they run back to their friends. And they say, what was that? Goblins aren't supposed to do that. And they were very frustrated. And, people got up and got upset, and they decided, like, maybe we're not going to play tonight. And I'm like, so wait a minute. This is real serious. You're a witch who can fly. You can throw lightning bolts. And you're telling me that you got a problem with somebody hitting you with a fireball? Well, not somebody, but not a goblin. So they resolved the issue. They beat up the goblins, and they realized the goblin had a ring of fire breathing. And so somebody got a nice, cool magic item. And by the end of the night, there was a lot of satisfaction at the table, because like people were really suddenly stunned that not only had they beat up those goblins who were way tougher than they had to be, but they took a magical item from somebody who was actually using it against them. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like they earned it. They didn't just take it out of somebody's pocket after they died, who wasn't smart enough to, actually use this against them. So that's probably the one that 25 years later people are still talking about, those goblins.
So that actually, I think that's a very interesting situation that has come up, and I think regardless of whether it's Hero or D&D, it's something that I have seen in my games many times, where a character comes up with what they think is a creative solution to a problem. Like, hey, we're fighting goblins, we'll just fly and throw lightning bolts. And then when you as the DM, regardless of whether you had planned this before or you just changed it on the fly, I don't know, it doesn't matter, try to still give them a challenge, there's an instant sort of, you're not playing fair reaction.
Right.
And I think that's where, because they wanted an easy victory, they wanted their creativity to be rewarded, which I can, again, as a quote unquote creative player, that's what I want as well. But as a DM, I also don't want you to be able to just now, that's your go-to strategy in every battle. You're just going to do that, and then like it's never going to be fun. So again, that's not exactly what you presented, but I think that's where I want to start with. So I'll go to Chris to first with, if like, where is the line between, as a DM, wanting to make sure that the game is challenging versus the players looking for fun in a creative, easy victory? Like, have you ever dealt specifically with that paradigm between players' mindset and your mindset, and any interesting or difficult takes you'd like to share?
Yeah, a lot. When I was younger, especially, I gamed with a lot of people at college who in their spare time did nothing but read the monster manual. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times as a game master, you got a bunch of goblins. Oh, they're on page 78. They have 6 hit points. They do blah, blah, blah. And as a GM, you're like, well, I want to make it more interesting. So you throw something like that at them. And then just like you experienced, they're like, well, they shouldn't be able to do that. They're only a level 1 monster. And
right.
But isn't it boring if you always know what to do and how to beat them?
As a level 1 adventurer, you know what I mean? Yeah. You are all whizzing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, a lot of that is, for some people, that's their fun. They really love reading that book. Like in your story or your situation, as a GM, the only twist I would have put on it is that fireball would have gone off, and I would have rolled behind the screen, and no matter what I rolled, it would have gone off like right below them. It would have just missed them. So they're like, oh, hold on. Maybe it just causes them to step back and rethink their approach versus hitting them with damage.
Right.
That's the thing I had to learn by similar situations with what you did. And then they go, oh my gosh, maybe the goblins have a such and such wizard there that's really leading them, or now we have to be stealthier about it. I know as a game master, sometimes it is frustrating. We'll spend hours planning a encounter just to have somebody creatively think their way around it. And you're like, well,
Right.
this is going to be very boring and anticlimactic. And you want it to be more climactic and you want to build that tension. At the same time, sometimes you just have to be like, high five, you out-thunk me there. You
Right.
know?
I think for like convention games, which other than a very small segment of my gaming right now, that's like the majority of what I do is I run one shots for various people, either through our Discord or through like online conventions or whatever. I'm like, I want to reward creativity, but I'm probably going to keep a fight if I've got a fight plan, because that's part of what I'm trying to show off of the system is this is how combat works. So I'm going to reward with like a great advantage, or I may do a thing like, oh, you wiped out 12 goblins. Here's 10 more that were always coming. I promise you. On my sheet it said 22 goblins. Just, whatever. Because I don't want to take away their fun, but I want them to experience what a combat's like. In a long-term campaign, I am much more likely these days to go, God, that was just genius. Okay, yeah, you wiped them out. You're done. And then the next time we get into a fight, I'll try to plan for that stratagem. But even then, you get into the problem where how does every goblin know that that's what we're going to do? So they've all now got this protection. Like every goblin has a ring of lightning reduction or whatever.
Right.
And because if you can win every fight that way, it's not fun. And two, if we were living in a world that is anywhere near realistic, someone else would have already thought of this plan, and someone else would have already conquered the world if all it takes is a witch flying 15 hexes to defeat anything. So you got to work with me a little bit here that, yes, I'm going to let you get some advantage, but this isn't a I win button.
Right. They were smart enough to take over the church. You know what I mean? The local townspeople couldn't figure it out, and how many adventures have you been on?
Yeah.
You're just getting started, and, maybe there's some stuff to learn.
We actually, years ago made a rule where if you say, oh, I know what that is, hold on, I want you to roll an intelligence check. Oh, your character has no clue. Act as if your character doesn't know. And then we stopped giving XP out for monsters. We gave out XP straight up for role playing.
Right.
So then if somebody went, oh, that's a goblin. All right, well, you used out of character knowledge. I'm sorry, you're only getting 50. Well, Michael, you did great. Here's 1,000.
Yeah.
And that kind of balanced that out really well. And it turned out to challenge players more than they thought it would.
Yeah, I just like the idea that, if you're going to be getting all of this money, if you're going to go and capture all of this loot, if you're going to find magical this and that, why is it the creature you're fighting using it against you?
100%. That used to drive me crazy.
There's a webcomic called Goblins.
That's what I want to talk about today.
in that comic, they talk about that. Why do we leave this in the treasure chest? Why aren't we using it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I've always thought that too.
I made a big thing, like whenever I started running games, I would give the bad guys cool magic items, but you had to take it from them. They weren't just going to be like, this was locked in a chest. Sometimes I would do the thing where they didn't know what they had. So the goblins had like a magic wand, but they used it as just like the, king stick or whatever. They didn't know how to use it. But for the most part, if you're fighting someone that's got a +3 mace, they're swinging it at your face to start the battle.
That's right.
And, I kind of have an aversion to magic items. It's kind of famous along the podcast that I don't give out very many magic items. And that's part of it as well, that there is a world-shattering aspect to the way magic was doled out in like the older D&D. And I remember I was playing in college. It's one of the few times I got to play because I've always been the forever DM. And I don't know if it was a module we were playing or if it was a homebrew, but we got to a part where we got magic items. Like we accomplished a thing and the DM's like, okay, I'm going to roll to find out what you get. And it was like on a random chart. And I remember the way that we got the magic item is someone had decided to check the throne for like a secret catch or secret panel or whatever. And so the DM's like, oh yeah, that's great. Let me roll. We got like a +3 set of plate mail armor. And I was like, I don't care how cool of an item that is. That is so dumb that would be in where was it? It just, I couldn't get over the fact that it made no sense to the point that I didn't enjoy getting it because the way we got it was so dumb. And that, I'm sure that's a Michael thing, but it drove me insane.
Well, I played in a game where you had magic shops. Whatever you want in the book, here's a value for it. You know, the wizard would go, oh, I need a magic pearl and an eye of newt. Bring those to me in 10,000 gold and I'll make you a Vorpal sword. And you could just buy whatever you wanted.
Or you let them buy things, or things just have, charges,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like suddenly you're playing a different kind of resource management game.
Yeah. So, Mo, did you want to talk more about, you said that Goblin comic? Did you want to talk about that later in the other section, or is it still relevant here?
I wanted to talk about goblins as my creature. So, like, I was going to reference that, but I love that comic.
Okay.
And, yeah. We can get into it later. Then.
I don't want to, mess up the detention class schedule.
Oh yeah, no worries, no worries. I just want to make sure that I gave you time for that. So the other kind of thing here, and I know this is going to be a big surprise to anyone listening. Some of this, what sounds like, might have been like expectations weren't on the same page with what first level characters could do in this version of a fantasy world versus maybe a D&D. So maybe a session, I don't know.
I'm ready for you.
Ding, take a drink. So if you had to do it all over again, so you go back to the person you were, however long ago this was, your friends, people with you, if you had to do it over again, would you do anything differently to try to soften that from wherever becoming a problem? Other than, of course, again, a session.
We don't say that word?
Well, we just have to drink every time, so sometimes it gets a little, exhausting.
Oh, got it. Yeah. So, back when I was a kid, we didn't have that session 0 thing.
I'm there with you. You're not that old.
Me neither. I thought they were the dumbest thing in the world when someone told me about them when I'm like, that's so dumb. And now I think they're genius. So it's just, hopefully age and wisdom have changed me.
Absolutely. Especially, I mean, I think we have enough movie content out there that you can really say, I want to play a Game of Thrones. It's like magic is like something that like kids talk about and adults don't believe in. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's like, I think that's an interesting world. Or you play something where, essentially you can go get any kind of magic thing, and magic is like guns in America. Yeah. It's like you can put your hand on a magic item if you got to. So I don't know. I think that probably would have helped, but I think I was also still pretty immature, and I was, writing up a game like I saw in the D&D manuals, where it's like, here are a series of traps that are bound to get your players. And I mean, I'm older. I'm a lot more mellow now, and I would probably definitely handle it different. My biggest challenge has been, we're playing this fantasy game, but like there's so many boundaries and rules. But at the end of the day, everybody wants to have fun. So we should all be playing the same game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think, and I think that's what's so important, because looking back on just my experience as someone who ran games and used to get into these like heated arguments, like absolute, almost like yelling at each other because my players weren't having fun, and they would be like, we're playing, but we're not having fun. And I'm like, well, I want to have fun too. And it's not fun for me if you always get what you want. And they're like, but you don't ever give us what we want. And, because I was a kid, I was dumb and I was immature. But the idea if I could go back into that 12-year-old and say, if you just spent half an hour, maybe hour tops, making sure everyone understood what everyone was trying to do before we tried to do it, it would be so much more fun. And I just think I would have got, even though I loved D&D and I have fond memories of it, individual moments of that were pretty awful most of the time, actually. I mean, it's kind of surprising I still enjoy it for all the heartaches I went through to get there. And out of all the people I played with, I'm the only one that still plays. All my players they never even think about playing. It's like it's such a thing from their childhood, and it stayed with me. And again, I can't really speak to that, but it's just interesting to think about like how I could have made those games more fun for them if I knew more what they were trying to accomplish and they knew more about what I was trying to do. And again, we were all on the same page.
I think part of the difference is your ego back then was what your story wanted. As we get older, we realize our ego shifts to what the table wants. So we have more pride in looking around at the table and going, hey, we all had a great time versus I got to tell my story. I think that's what a little bit of age and wisdom has, obviously granted the three of us, because I think that's how we all run games now.
And I, to your point, Michael, I took some time off because I was in too many of those games where, people were you're invited to like tell any story that you wanted in somebody's game, long as it was their story,
Yeah.
And, I came back to the hobby and, found that it was a very different place. And, I played, I haven't even actually played 5th Ed yet. I played Shadow of the Demon Lord, which is very
You're talking to the right guy.
4th Eddie. And I've played a couple games of Champions, just for nostalgia's sake. But, I've definitely fallen into the story game track where you're gaming to have an adventure, and your character wants to do a certain thing, but sometimes you're just trying to tell a good story, and have an experience that just takes your mind off of the day job, and the bills you got to pay on Friday. So
I think you nailed it on the head right there. Especially for me, I used to just sit around and read rule books all the time.
Right.
I don't find that as enjoyable anymore, because I manage a team where I have to follow rules and guidelines from the corporation, and I'm constantly getting bombarded with reports and new procedures, and I don't want to read any of that when I get home. I just want to get home and be like, hey, I have this funny idea for this story where you guys are all going to be, goblins riding on the back of orcs charging down a hill.
Right.
Who's in? Like, that's where my mind goes, because it gets me out of the mindset of rules. So I think you hit it right on the head there for me.
I think too, for me, like when I think back on like my favorite moments, even as a kid GM, it wasn't the combats. It wasn't like defeating the bad guy. It was something that someone said that was, perfect for the situation. It was unexpected. Basically, it's the times where I got to laugh. And, as a storyteller, I still dream and aspire to having those sessions where I make everyone at the table just weep, that something has happened in the story that's so affecting that it makes them like cry, because I've helped craft this world that means so much to them. But I'm probably never going to get that. But I can make a dick and fart joke and have people laughing their asses off easy. So I lean more into that now, because it's more of a reward. Like I can get an instant reaction, get people laughing, and that makes people want to come back and play the game, and it makes me happy.
Exactly. And after a while, like Chris said, you realize you don't want to game with everybody at every con and have different people coming in and out of your house that you don't know.
I think back, the fact that I wasn't murdered, like all the different random people's houses I would go to. And again, I'm from Southeast Kentucky. We would go like an hour into this backwoods and be playing in like a church rec center in the basement. The fact that I'm still alive is kind of a miracle.
I grew up in a small redneck town. We played in James's apartment with the windows closed, the blinds closed. It could be 100 degrees outside with no air conditioning. We're just sweating, but nobody could see what we were doing, because late 80s, early 90s. And the old Satanic Panic was still real popular in my little hometown.
Smash Gladly has to bounce. Thanks for hanging out with us as long as you did. Happy to have you around.
Come back next time.
I've talked about that before. Like I would lie all the way up until like 12 years ago. If like I was playing D&D and like I'd said something and people were like, oh, you got people coming over, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, we're gonna play poker, or we're gonna play video games. Like I would not tell people I played role-playing games for years, because I was afraid there would be a stigma and it would affect my standing in their eyes professionally. And then I got to the place, it's when the podcast started that I'm like, I tell everybody, it's like, hey, I do this, listen to my podcast. I just completely changed my mindset. And it's so ubiquitous now. Like so many people play. I think a lot of that stigma is gone, though there's still probably some people that would feel that way. Sure. But I think they're in the minority. It just, hopefully they're not like your boss. Then it doesn't matter if there's just one person, if it's that one person.
Yeah. I just tell people to play nerdy games and hang out,
Yeah.
and then they usually just leave it at that.
I was definitely in the closet as a gamer during my dating days because, yeah.
I had that moment at college where, walking through campus life night and seeing all the different groups. And there was a group of people that were like, hey, we do this role playing thing. And I looked around like, what are you doing this out in public for? Like, why are you talking out loud? And they're like, oh, you should be proud of it. And I was like,
Right.
All right. This is a little odd to me.
Yeah.
And, I also didn't go to a huge college. Grand Valley State University's a smaller school, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
So actually, to clarify, something you said made me think of this. It wasn't as much the podcast. That was certainly part of it. It's that when I went to Gen Con for the first time, that was truly what opened my eyes, because I went, the second year of the podcast was the first time I'd ever gone to Gen Con. I had never been to any convention of any type ever. And then I go to Gen Con, which is, like 60,000 people, and everybody's just literally, to steal the phrase, out and proud about their gaming. And it was like, this isn't something that I just do insularly in my basement with a few friends. Like, this is this huge worldwide, thing that I'm a part of. And that, coupled with the podcast, is really what kind of brought me out and made me just start being an advocate and an ambassador for the hobby. And so again, obviously, not everyone can go to Gen Con. Everyone wants to go to Gen Con. Catacon, if you're talking about game cons. But I think going to a convention like that really did open my eyes to this community that I didn't realize was out there, that I wasn't a part of because I didn't realize it was there. And now my identity is tied up as much in the RPG Academy as it is anything else in my life other than my family. And even that, I spend more time doing RPG Academy stuff than I do family stuff a lot of the time.
Let me know if I get too boomery, but one of the things I definitely kind of realized, a social activity with my friends was, 1 second.
Sure.
A social activity with my friends was definitely playing video games, and the way they talk to the screen, playing Madden, and all the games that they were playing, killing monsters and everything. I'm like, this is what we used to do when we gamed, And it's great that you could press a power button when you get home, like you were saying, Chris, and you just fall down the rabbit hole whenever you're ready is awesome. But you what you don't have, and actually you do have the community today, because you can actually play online and chat with your friends and everything. So it's the same thing,
Hey, it's a great time to be alive if you're into role playing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Or just gaming in general. I played DC Debt Builder today with two people, one in Texas, the other I don't know where in the world they live, but we all hung out and played a game for an hour and a half online. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
Yep. All right, so I could talk about this probably for a while, but we got to move on. So we're going to do everyone's favorite part of the game, which is where we make complete asses of ourselves playing the Where Have My Fingers Been improv game. So Mo, you were again our guest, so you can go first, second, or third in relation to either giving the prompt, receiving the prompt. So what would you like to do, sir?
I will receive the prompt first this time, because I was stressing last time.
Okay.
So let's just do it.
All right, so I'm going to give you the prompt. You will then do the scene. You will then give Chris the prompt. He will do the scene, and then Chris will give me the prompt, and we'll complete the circle. But before I give you the prompt, you must, of course, do the song. But just for the audience, in case you don't know, we're playing an improv game called Where Have My Fingers Been, which is where the performers will create a small scene using finger puppets to act out the scene that was given to us, unless you want to be like Scott and bring in a third because you're a jerk and you're actually good at this. Okay, so do you know the song, Mo?
Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
Your fingers are inside a church that is currently being surrounded by goblins when a group of heroes arrives to save you.
So, little goblins, it's a good time to negotiate if you're smart. You think these are the first people to come help you? Oh, well, maybe I'll just relax and see how this goes. Good idea.
And that's where your fingers have been. Yay! Excellent.
All right. Did I do okay?
Yeah, you did fantastic.
All right.
All right. So now you will give Chris a prompt for where his fingers have been. So Chris, sing your song.
So, where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
Okay. Your fingers have been in a sushi restaurant when a guy with a samurai sword and an afro kicks in the door looking for your brother.
All right. This is my first time having sushi. I'm really excited. I hear it's a great way to lose weight. Bam. I've been looking for your brother. Where is he? Which one? I have 12. Could you narrow it down for me? The ugly one. Still leaves 10. Keep going. The one that killed my father. We're down to 6. Keep going. I need more clues, please. The one that you don't like. Still at 6. Keep going. Would you like some sushi? It's really good. He's making it right over there. I have been looking for him for 10 years. Tell me, where is he? Still at 6. Gotta help me out here. Just tell me where the first one is. I think he's in Kentucky somewhere. And that's where my fingers have been.
Yay!
Yay!
Awesome. Alrighty. So, where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
You are trying to talk your way past the Goblin Guard to rescue the princess.
Aha. Hello. Yeah, who are you? I am Captain Wainwright. Okay. Am I supposed to know who that is? You have never heard of Captain Wainwright? No, I've never heard of Captain Wainwright. I kind of thought you had. That was all part of my plan. I spent like an hour coming up with some sort of backstory on who I was. I guess it would have made more sense if I picked a name of someone who actually existed and not this person I created in my head. Are you a bard? Yes, I am. I'm an actor! Stab. Oh! And that's where my fingers have been.
Yay!
Yay! All right, so now we will move on to the last section of the show. This is called Cryptozoology, and this is where we talk about a monster, often from D&D, but not always. We talk about some ways that we have used these creatures in the past and maybe brainstorm some ways we could use them in the future. Mo, you are our guest. Which creature did you want to talk about tonight?
I want to talk about goblins, as Chris, already knows. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder earlier.
You're good.
But I think dun dun dun.
Fifth edition goblins, but we don't have to talk about those specifically. But go ahead, sir.
I fell down the rabbit hole of kind of having a issue with monsters after I read Lord of the Rings. I read fantasy growing up, and as a young adult, I said, all right, I'm finally going to read the Bible of fantasy. I'm going to read Lord of the Rings. And I got through the first book, and I was just like, it really feels like there is a thing going on here that I've always seen, where you have these monster races that are only smart enough to breed and get killed. And there's a certain point where they're smart enough to build all these traps. They're smart enough to build all this stuff. And I've stumbled upon a online comic called Goblins that Chris was talking about earlier. And, it kind of spelled it out. And I realized, back to the question of what kind of game are we playing? I like games where maybe fighting can resolve problems, but killing people doesn't necessarily solve problems. And so that kind of was part of my inspiration for writing Shibuyan Knights. I love the idea that, goblins aren't monsters anymore. They're player class now, right?
They can be. I don't know in 5th edition. I think 4th edition they definitely were. I don't know if 5th edition they are again. There's probably a supplement or something somewhere out there. But I think 4th edition they were definitely made into. I say definitely. I think.
Yeah, I feel like I remember playing a goblin in a version of D&D. I don't recall which.
Shadow of the Demon Lord. They definitely are. I know that because I played one.
Absolutely. Second edition had the old humanoid handbook.
Right.
They might have been in. I don't remember.
Yeah.
You could
So
play, you could play monsters from there, but go ahead.
yeah, I just like the idea that, monsters have an opportunity to go out, be civilized, have adventures, and, outwit player characters at any level.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, I mean, players are constantly looking for these things that make them smarter. How come a goblin can't have that? Players have gods. Don't goblins have gods? How come goblins can't be clerics? And um, I just like the humanoid monster races that lend toward you finding yourself in a situation where you should negotiate before you draw a sword. And so, like organized, efficient use of goblins and trolls and orcs. But I think people look down on goblins. So I like goblins to start with. That really is kind of where fantasy takes off for me,
Okay.
because I find that you know we try to kill our way out of all of these problems in the real world, and it never really seems to be a suitable resolution,
Yeah.
and we find ourselves decades down the road having problems based on those other problems. And so maybe just killing all the goblins to get to the treasure is a little too fantastic for me.
Gotcha. So BitPlayer jumped in. 3.0 and 3.5 had options for humanoid character PCs as well, and that's one of their favorite versions. But I completely agree with you. That's a thing about my DMing that has sort of changed over time, similar to magic items. Like, you're never going to just find a +3 mace. I don't say never, but almost never. Someone's going to be using it. I also didn't like the idea that any creature like that, well, in my mind, there was a difference between what I would call a creature, like an owlbear or a shadow demon, and a goblin or an orc or half orc or whatever. And I started using them differently because of that, because I had the problem. So I am much more likely for you to face goblins who are doing something because they are being forced to by some other problem. And so your task isn't to kill all the goblins, it's to solve that other problem.
Right.
And
right,
it could be a food issue that becomes like negotiating so that goblins are given a tract of land to farm. So you got to negotiate a peace treaty. It could be that the trolls or the giants are like forcing them to go out and scavenge for them. So you have to get rid of the troll or the giant, or maybe again, you may have to go 3 levels of up to figure out like the root cause to solve it.
Right.
But I really tried to avoid, let's just kill everything here and we win. I will say that there's a small caveat that when I do my introduction to D&D games, I almost always use goblins as the bad guy.
Right.
Because they're very squishy, and it's in sort of the common lore that there's a lot of them. And I very much do waves of combat. So if I throw 4 goblins at them and they just wipe them out, 4 more will show up because I want that combat to be interesting. If I throw 4 at them and they are having a really rough time, then no more will show up. And so they're very versatile for me in that regard. But beyond these intro to D&D games that I run at cons, if you find a goblin in my game, it's very likely that they are smarter than you, have more magic items than you, maybe manipulating you. They're not just something you're going to hit with a stick until they die. I do not like that at all. Chris, what about you? Have you had any particular issues with goblins or any creative ways you've used them you want to share?
I haven't used goblins much because I'm the guy that doesn't like the normal creatures in D&D because I run into people always knowing what they are. I've always tried to put a twist on anything like that. So 3rd edition did have character levels you could give to monsters. So I'd always tell my players, you may know what that is in the monster manual. Remember the DMG, I give them character levels. So now you can run into a goblin that's throwing fireballs at you.
Right.
And now you're thinking, oh my gosh, is this a 3rd level, is this a 5th level wizard hiding a goblin or what? So I would do things like that. What's funny is you mentioned a minute ago, Mo, that you like the idea of goblins becoming more like the heroes. In college, in 2nd edition, I played a lizard man who that was his whole point of the character was he was going to prove that monsters could be valuable within cities. So he became a knight. I mean, we played this for a year and a half. He became a knight, accidentally formed a religion where monsters were worshiping him. And it was a fun game, but it was the same
If you're
concept of
smart,
what you're
that's not
talking about.
something you do by accident.
Well,
Yeah.
the character wasn't that smart. He was pretty much a barbarian. So,
Was his character named L. Ron Hubbard?
no.
Lizard
have a big
R.
boat.
Hubbard.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite games, though, because it was a different spin. And the game master then went, hold on, you're going to see other monsters and you're not going to immediately go attack them. You're more likely to attack the humans that are trying to attack the monsters because you want to kind of prove both sides. So it gave the game master a neat spin on what he had to do in building his world. Plus, it was just a fun character.
Nice.
We had a 2-hour in-character debate between him and the wizard on why spells are dumb. I mean, you cast a spell once and it's gone. I can keep swinging this sword over and over and over, and I never forget how this sword works. But then the wizard went, well, but I have to memorize these things. And second edition did such a poor job of explaining to you, it's more like a reserve of power you have. And when you run out of it, you don't have any more.
Right.
So he's trying to explain to him, and it was just so much fun to go back and forth with, a fighter trying to explain why his sword's better than the wizard's spells.
Right. No, I mean, it's great. I know exactly what happened. I ended up getting a degree in English. So I found myself going back to everything, from religion to Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy, and like reading way too much into everything. So it's like, to me, the same way, I'm much more interested in like political intrigue movies than, cowboys and Indians, I think there's a way to play a game that's a lot more rich than, okay, did we kill it yet?
Yeah.
Is it still up? All right, we roll a hit it again,
Yeah. Well, and just having like creatures with a survival instinct that, if there's 20 goblins and you kill 5 of them in turn 1, they're going to surrender or run away. They're not just going to all stay there and fight till the death. Like, so if you do want to have a fight where you just hit things, but use them like intelligent creatures, because that just makes more sense. Give them something they want and then make it where they can't have it. When I do my DMing panels, we talk about that. Like, if the goblins are on the field because you have the orb of Arcanar and there's 1,000 goblins, what happens if you break the orb? Well, that's the reason they were there. Now that it's completely broken, they don't want to kill you. They're just going to go home, or they might, go, like storm over like a countryside, which is a different problem. But like, I don't want it just to be like we hit things with a stick until it stops moving and we win. I really don't like that, regardless of what creature. But is there a particular way that you have used a goblin, or maybe you're thinking of using one that you could share, like a future option for you?
For me, like I think I'm introducing kind of monster races into the Shibuyan Knights mythos. That's a splat book that's coming. I didn't say soon. So
you just said coming.
Yeah.
I said coming. And I just like the idea that everybody has a perspective, and when you look at kind of when you need to negotiate with people individually. You can't look at in Shibuya Nights, you can't look at the Oni and say, well, they're all just trying to destroy Shibuya because they're religious zealots. There might be a more nuance to that than just that. And dealing with somebody on that level, you may kind of find yourself frustrated because, you could have just talked them out of it. So I just like the idea that if something can talk, if it's smart enough to talk, if you could speak a language to it, or in D&D terms, if it can speak common, there is another way to deal with it outside of
Absolutely.
kill.
Yeah.
If they've got the ability to understand language and communication, even within themselves, you should be able to figure out a way of doing it as well. I agree with that 100%. And that's something I've used.
And I know people who are going to say, well, that makes like suddenly like every game is like, oh, political and social justicey and da 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 da. I'm like, play your game how you want at your house.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
I run a lot of Star Wars. The Jedi and the Sith,
Right.
they do a lot of back and forth politics, but they still
Right.
fight a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
And
kind of at the core of what they are in a weird
I
way.
mean, you can make a goblin really smart, but also a jerk, and
Mm-hmm.
still end up fighting with it. But it's a different feeling. I think in some ways more rewarding and more fulfilling when you have that goblin who's a jerk, who's like actually maybe outmaneuvering the players for a little while, and then you get to fight them. It's just more interesting.
Yeah.
Are either of you familiar with the Eberron setting?
Yes.
just from live streams that I listen to,
So
I've listened to a couple people playing it.
I say that it's my favorite setting, and it truly is, but I still don't know it as well as probably someone who casually is a fan. But from what I recall, there was a great civilization, like hundreds, thousand years ago, that was pretty much goblins, and they were like advanced, and it was like it was almost like a cataclysmic type event ruined their civilization, and now the human, elf, dwarf civilization is kind of built on top of that.
Right.
So currently, goblins are very much like what you would think you'd see in D&D, but they have this legacy, and almost every city that you go to is probably built on the bones of a goblin city. So there's this sort of history there, and this gravitas that comes with that opens up these ideas of like, oh, we found this thing, it's goblin made, and that's actually cool and interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to go find a goblin because they'll know how to open this chest. And that's a twist on things that I had never really got to. That I really like the idea that before humans were around, goblins pretty much ran the place. And if something, almost like dinosaurs, if an asteroid hadn't hit, they'd probably still be running the place. I just think that's kind of an interesting twist on just these nuisances, like you said, they breed and then have to be killed.
Yeah, not to conflate goblins with the Chinese, but before the COVID, I was drinking too much with some folks, and they were saying, somebody went to sleep 50 years ago and woke up, in 2018. Most things would be the same except for the cell phone. And I said, also made in China would like have a very different ring to it.
Yeah.
And I mean, the world changes, I think things happen, and tides come in and tides go out.
Yep. The only constant is, in fact, change. So, all right. So with that, we will actually go into the last portion of the show, and this is where we have audience Q&A. It looks like there's a couple people still hanging out with us. Targus for one, maybe BitPlayer for the other. I don't know for sure if they're still with us. But if you have any questions you'd like to ask me, Chris, or Mo, doesn't have to be roleplay related. Kind of makes sense that it would be, but doesn't have to be. You can have a chance here to ask. We'll do our best to answer. I know there's a little bit of a delay, so while we're waiting for that to catch up, Mo, one more time, tell people where they can find you on the internet, find them where they can get a copy of your book or check out any of your work.
You can find me at ashyfeet.com. And that's where you'll find information about Shibuyan Knights. That's where you'll find information about some of the short films and documentaries that I've done. I moved to LA to do the filmmaking thing and realized if I didn't find millions of dollars, that the filmmaking thing may not be a thing I could do effectively. So, I also like I think the community building that happens with a role-playing game, and people being able to actually engage in a story is way better than like the posters you've seen that look awesome. And like you go in and you watch the movie and you're like, well, that's not what I expected. I would have done a different story. How many times have you said that?
Oh, yeah.
And that's the pitch for role-playing games.
Oh.
So.
All right. And one more time. So it's ashyfeet.com. That's also your Twitter handle.
Ashyfeet.com. Ashyfeet1 is my Twitter handle. And I chat and like and promote and just I wasn't a Twitter guy until COVID hit, and it's like I got tired of talking to my family about the same stuff over and over again. And my wife was on Twitter. I was like, what are you laughing about? And she's like, oh, you're not on Twitter. So now she sends me jokes on Twitter.
And there will be links in our show notes when this comes out, audio only for all that stuff as well. Chris, what about you?
Burlew _Chris on Twitter. I'm not on a whole lot of other places. Yep.
And the podcast that you're the DM.
Oh yeah, I probably should talk about that so I don't get yelled at. I do Game Master for the Redemption podcast. My challenge is still out there. I still say we're the longest running Star Wars AP. If you can prove me wrong, I'll give you a high five. I can't really give you anything else right now, but I'd be curious to see if anybody else is a longer running AP.
Nice. As for myself, of course, Michael at the RPG Academy. Almost everything I do can be found there in some place or the other. I'm most active on Twitter, but we do have a Facebook. We have the Discord, which I'm absolutely loving Discord. It's fantastic. So if you are a follower of this show, but you're not on our Discord yet, please consider, even if you don't do Discord, maybe you're a little bit nervous, like you don't know what Discord is and you don't want to get another social platform. I get it. We're low maintenance. There's not a ton of activity on our Discord except for the WandaVision channel right now, which is getting hot. But you can choose to ignore certain channels so you don't have to worry about that. You can mute it so you don't get notifications. But if you want to jump in and talk about a TV show, favorite comic book, what you're playing video game wise, or maybe jump into a one-shot RPG, or like today we organized a game of DC Deck Builder on Tabletop Simulator, it's a great place to do it. It's a closed community. Anyone can join, but you have to ask me, because when we first started it, we just made it completely open. Unless people jumped in, we're jerks. We had to boot them all. So basically, you ask me for an invite, I'll send you the invite. So we did have a question. Targus asked, what are our favorite unconventional PC races? So Mo, I'll start with you. Any favorite unconventional PC races?
I also played a lizard man in a D&D game, and I am really lizard men are effective. They have a bite, they have armor. I'm like, if you're gonna play a game where it's all about min-maxing the stats on racial boundaries, it's like, all right, play a lizard man.
Chris, what about you?
I've played a Minotaur, I've played a Lizard Man. The one I've always wanted to play is an angel that's come back to Earth or whatever planet you're on some sort of mission, but he can't let anybody know he's an angel.
We're on a mission from God.
Yeah, he has these 10-foot wings that he has to keep hiding somehow. I think it'd be a neat spin on something, but it'd be a tough game to play, I think. What about you?
Pretty boring because I don't play that much. Like I'm almost always the DM for like my D&D type campaigns. I really like Warforged. I don't know if they're considered unconventional. They're kind of standard in a lot of places, but I just love the idea of playing Warforged. And then I like playing like counterculture. Like I like playing Dwarven Wizards or Dwarven Rogues. And like, Elvish fighters and gnomish barbarians. So just sort of like things that don't quite match up with, the stereotypical expectations. I have played Tieflings. I think they're kind of cool. But I've never played a Minotaur. I've never played a Faun or a Centaur. So kind of boring in those regards. But fun question. Go ahead.
I played a Pixie in Fantasy Hero. But I think Fantasy Hero is kind of cheating because it's like, play what you want to play, using hero systems. So if you're good enough at accounting, you could build your character and he could do whatever you want. But I had I'm sorry?
I played a Shih Tzu in a weird spin of second edition D&D where we were all dogs.
Oh, okay.
That was probably the most unique one I've ever played. But that was an interesting game. We had to escape from the pound.
In a Roll20 system.
Yeah, it was all second edition D&D. Yeah, the Game Master spent hours because we all had little things like I could manipulate objects because I was the thief. So somehow my paws had a
right.
How it worked, but I described it as I was picking locks with my tail. And somebody explained to me.
Did you guys get into fights?
Yeah, it was biting, scratching. We had to escape from the pound. So whoever's the head of the pound, I don't.
Like the dog catcher.
Dog catcher.
Yeah, dog catcher.
Yeah.
We had to fight him to get out.
That sounds like a fun one shot. Yeah. I dig that.
It was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, Targus, thank you for the question. Very much appreciate. Also appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. Again, if anyone's watching or listening in the future, we do this every other Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. On the Tuesday before Detention, I'm currently running a 13th Age campaign called Shadow Spawns or Shadows Pawns. We still have yet to figure out which one it is, that being the players of where they fall. And on the alternating weeks, so 1 week from tonight, Tom runs a Ghosts of Saltmarsh 5e campaign. It's been going on now for close to half a year, I think, or something.
Yeah.
It's quite extensive. They're going to try to get that one to 1 to 20, and then they're going to move on to something else. And then all the things we do on here will eventually find their way to YouTube, and they'll also eventually find their way to audio-only podcast. So, Mo, one more time, where can people find you and find your work on the internet?
If you want to play a anime style RPG that's all about kind of the political intrigues amongst the guilds of Shibuya, steampunk version of Tokyo, modern day Tokyo, pick up Shibuyan Knights at ashyfeet.com or Indie Press Revolution or Drive Through RPG.
And that is built on the Forged in the Dark engine, correct?
Built on the Forged in the Dark engine that looks a lot like PBTA, Powered by the Apocalypse.
Nice.
If any of that makes sense to you, if it doesn't, it tells you how to play it. You need 2 6-sided dice.
All right, Mo, well, thank you so much for joining. It was an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you for being a fan of our show and a patron of ours and helping the Academy do the thing that we do. Chris, obviously, thank you as well. So Tom won't yell at me tonight. I'm going to say it. So remember, if you're having fun,
you're doing it right.
Doing it right. Awesome. Thank you both, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.